I've been praised before. I've been applauded for the projects I nailed, the deadlines I hit, the clever ideas I managed to pull out of nowhere. And for a while, I thought that was what defined me. The list of successes people could point to when they needed an example of reliable. But the truth is, none of those moments shaped me half as much as the one mistake I made. The one I wish I could have erased. The one that, if you looked at it from the outside, probably looked like a career-ending blunder. It happened on a Tuesday morning, a day that was supposed to be ordinary. I had been given responsibility for a client project, the biggest one I'd ever handled. Not because I was the most senior, not because I was the smartest, but because my boss trusted me, and I was eager to prove that the trust wasn't misplaced. I had spent weeks putting the pieces together, coordinating, revising, double-checking numbers. But in the final stretch, I overlooked something small. A detail so minor it seemed invisible until it wasn't. When the project went live, the error sat there in plain sight. A number that should have read one way was written another. It wasn't just cosmetic, it completely changed the interpretation of the data. The client noticed immediately. They were furious. And just like that, the air shifted. Instead of applause, there was silence. Instead of praise, there were whispered questions. How did this happen? Who was responsible? I remember standing in that conference room with my throat tight and my palms sweating, wishing I could disappear. My boss looked at me, not angry, not yelling, just deeply disappointed. That look was worse than any punishment could have been. For the first time in my professional life, I wanted to quit. And yet, that mistake became the turning point of my entire career.
The hours that followed felt like weeks. My inbox was filling with questions from the team. My phone buzzed with short, clipped messages, and I could hear fragments of conversation as people tried to figure out how such a basic oversight had slipped through. I wanted to shout that I wasn't careless, that I had worked harder than I ever had in my life. But excuses stick to mistakes like shadows, and none of them could undo what had already happened. That night, I went home and sat in the dark. I didn't even bother to turn on the lights. I replayed the scene in my head over and over. The silence in that conference room, the way my boss had rubbed his temple, the look on the client's face. I felt like I had let everyone down, my team, my boss, the client, even myself. And here's the part that stung the most. I had built my identity on being the dependable one, the person people could trust, the person who didn't mess up. Now that image was cracked. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't just a crack, it was a shatter. For days, the weight sat on me. My stomach was tight all the time. I couldn't focus. I avoided eye contact in the office, afraid someone would see me for what I felt I was, a fraud, finally exposed. But the world didn't stop. The project had to be fixed, the client had to be reassured, and work went on. I remember walking back into the office after that long, miserable weekend, bracing myself for the way people would look at me. And yet, something unexpected happened. My boss didn't fire me. He didn't demote me. Instead, he called me into his office, closed the door, and said something I'll never forget. He said, "This mistake is big, yes, but it's not the end. What matters now is how you handle it. You can hide or you can learn." Those words landed
differently than I expected. I thought I was about to be destroyed. Instead, I was being given a choice: stay buried in the shame or rise out of it and own it. That moment was the beginning of a lesson that no success had ever been able to teach me.
After that conversation with my boss, I realized something I had never truly faced before. Failure was not the opposite of success, it was part of it. That mistake had stripped away the illusion I carried, the belief that I had to be flawless to be valuable. Up until then, I thought competence meant never messing up. But competence, I was beginning to understand, meant knowing what to do when you inevitably did mess up. The first step was the hardest: owning it. I drafted an email to the client myself. My hands shook the entire time. In it, I explained what had happened, why it happened, and the concrete steps we were already taking to correct it. I expected them to lash out, to use my mistake as proof of incompetence. Instead, they thanked me for the transparency. They weren't happy, of course they weren't, but they respected that I didn't hide behind excuses. That small shift lit something inside me. Over the next few weeks, I dedicated myself to fixing what I had broken. I combed through processes, identified weak points, and built new checks so that a slip like mine wouldn't happen again. Instead of avoiding my team, I leaned into them, admitting where I had failed and asking for their input. That was new for me. Before, I wanted to be the hero who could do everything alone. Now I was learning the strength of saying, I need help. And something surprising happened. People began to trust me more, not less, more. Because in my mistake, I had shown them two things. One, that I was human, and two, that I was willing to take responsibility. They saw me not as some untouchable, perfect worker, but as someone real, someone they could rely on because I wouldn't run when things went wrong. The irony is almost poetic. The very thing I feared would destroy my career ended up shaping it into something sturdier, something truer. Weeks turned into months, and that mistake slowly faded into the background, but the lessons it carried stayed front and center. The next time I was handed a big project, I didn't approach it with the same desperate need to prove myself flawless. Instead, I approached it with humility, with questions, with double checks, and with a willingness to share responsibility instead of hoarding it. And the strange thing? My work actually became better. By letting go of the need to appear perfect, I became more collaborative. I listened more. I built systems that made my team stronger instead of just trying to carry the load myself. And when the inevitable small bumps appeared, because they always do, I didn't panic. I adapted. Looking back, I can see clearly now, none of my polished wins, none of the times I nailed a presentation or got the perfect feedback, taught me as much as that one mistake. Success boosted my ego. Failure built my character. Even outside of work, I felt the shift. I stopped hiding my missteps in conversations with friends or family. I became more comfortable saying, I was wrong, or I don't know. And every time I did, it felt like a weight lifted. People didn't lose respect for me. If anything, they respected me more. That mistake at work didn't just change my career. It changed the way I carried myself in life. It taught me that being seen as perfect is far less important than being seen as real. And now, whenever someone on my team makes an error, I don't look at them with the cold disappointment I once feared so much. Instead, I remember what my boss told me that day. What matters now is how you handle it. And I pass those words on. Because mistakes don't define us. How we respond to them does. If you had asked me years ago which moment in my career defined me, I would have pointed to an award, a promotion, or some neatly framed success. But now I know better. The truth is, it was the mistake, the one that made me crumble, the one that made me question everything, the one I thought I'd never recover from. That single failure held more lessons than a lifetime of applause ever could. It taught me that perfection is fragile. One slip and it shatters. But honesty, humility, and resilience, those things endure. And maybe that's the strange gift of mistakes. They strip us down, force us to confront who we are when our image is broken, and give us the chance to rebuild on something sturdier, something real. If you've been carrying the weight of your own mistake, whether at work, at home, or in some corner of your life, maybe this is the reminder you need. You are not defined by the failure itself. You are defined by what you do next. Own it. Learn from it. Grow through it. And one day you might even look back with gratitude, the way I do now. This was my confession. One mistake more powerful than any success. If this resonated with you, share your story below or keep it safe with us here at the Anonymous Journal. These stories matter because they remind us that we're not alone in our struggles. Thank you for listening. And remember, mistakes don't ruin us. Sometimes they're the very thing that shape us.